Everybody's good.
Sorry, Councilman Hart, you're live.
Thank you, Sherry. So we are live, and I'd like to welcome all of you and anybody else that's attending to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting of January 20th, 2022. And I'll read our regular statement that, consistent with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted by remote participation, and the public may not physically attend this meeting, but every effort will be made to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting in real time and participate when necessary. Persons who wish to do so are invited to view the meeting at the web link on the city's website or at the phone number that's provided for this meeting. That done, welcome Councillor Gross, Councillor Gross, Councillor Wardley, Police Chief Eric Smith, Auditor Kenny Costa, CFO John Dunn. Do we have any other attendees present? Mary Ann, welcome. Nice to see your presence as ever. Mary Ann Boucher, Albert Boucher. We have a relatively brief agenda as posted. And the first item tonight is a memorandum from our fire chief regarding an application for the FEMA 2020-21 AFG program. And this is, we're not voting on anything, I believe, tonight. It's for information purposes only at this point. Chief Smith, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Well, good evening, Council. The department has put in yet another application in the FEMA program for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant. This is a federal fiscal year 21 funding that they have out there and available. The total value on this package is $462,400, and 10% of that, based on how FEMA does this, a 90-10 split. The federal government picks up $420,000 and change, and the city is on the hook for the $42,000 and change as that 10% match. So we're well below the threshold to require the COG grant checklist process to go through to get the permission up front, but there is a requirement to make sure that you guys know that this has been put forward, and we don't really know when they're going to start their review process and their award process. And given the extension that Kenny can talk to a little bit about their FY18 grant, and they extended this grant period's application by another month, they're still having technical difficulties with some of their systems, and I think just the nature of COVID and everything else is extending and slowing things down. So usually it's within the first quarter, but who knows exactly when they'll start rolling these out. And it usually takes several months from beginning to end, and they cycle it on a 2-week basis. So typically our federal delegation would get notification first, which I'd like to thank, from the mayor's office and all of you folks, and Senator Tarr and Ann Margaret, as well as the federal delegation for their support on this. So we always reach out to our state reps and senators and our federal delegation to get them to nudge FEMA for us. In the last 5 years, we've been awarded 6 grants. We struck gold, 2 different applications, one for a brand new ambulance several years ago, on top of the training and equipment funding like you see before you tonight. But this specific grant is to kind of finish off ordering hose that we've unfortunately fallen behind on because it's so expensive, and this will wrap that up. As well as getting some training that we need to get wrapped up done. And then probably the biggest piece of it is $100,000 each for the outskirt stations to install fire alarm systems, which we don't have, and sprinkler systems, which we don't have. And given that it's 10 cents on the dollar for the city to do that, and fortunately the cost per station ironically comes out to be almost exactly $100,000 with the quotes that we have in hand from the vendors that do this work. So Metro Swift, as well as I think Seaboyer for the fire alarm systems. So if we're awarded that and they give us the full amount for the request, then the 10% cost to get these facilities up to current code, if you were, to build them today, that would likely be a requirement, much like in a new fire station. Fire headquarters is not included in this process because the cost would be well over $100,000, and obviously the city would be on the hook for the difference. And I don't think we're kind of in a situation, given that we've been talking about replacing the headquarters station for 40 years in this town, and one of these days, hopefully sooner rather than later, that we'll make that move. So, investing further city dollars at that level in a building that may go through major modifications, could be removed altogether. Who knows what the future of that building is? But I'm not comfortable asking the city to put far more than that $100,000 limit into those systems there. Do I think we need it? Absolutely. Have all the audits said we need it? Absolutely. But again, we do have an operable fire alarm there, and we just brought that up actually and made some improvements to that as well. So it's not perfect, but it's better than what the outskirts are now. The outskirts will get up to the gold standard if we hit this thing, and then we'll see what the future brings.
Great. That was a very thorough presentation and good background. Members of the Budget and Finance Committee, are there any questions?
I have a couple. Scott.
Councilor Worthley, yes, please proceed.
So is there anything before us right now to vote on? I think you said earlier in the meeting that there isn't.
Not at this
Correct.
point.
The what I put forward was just the notice requirement under some of the council orders, because the threshold for having to request permission to apply for the grant is when it's a city match of over $100,000 or a multiple year financial commitments. So we don't hit that threshold on this one. So the requirement is to make the notice and let you know where we're at and what we're trying to get. That we've gone fishing.
So I'm new and I'm learning, so thank you for that. But you did use an acronym COG, and I don't know what that stands for.
Oh, sorry, City of Gloucester. So anything that's City of Gloucester Code of Ordinance, so COG, yeah.
We delete that from the record. COG. I thought it was some newfangled thing. Okay.
No.
We'll get to the accounting part later.
And then I only had one other question, and it's potentially related, but I don't know, Scott, if it's completely related. I'll let you be the judge of that. We had a council orientation meeting before this term started. And in that, I think Councilor Gross was, he had to stop for a second, advocate for a new boat for the waterways, for the harbor master. That got approved by Budget and Finance. And the question came up, again, I was paying attention to other things, so I'm not 100% sure this is right. The question came up is whether that boat could be used for fire protection. And I think the answer was, and Tony, correct me if I'm wrong, that the request was not including the cost of fire, and that would be a whole other amount of money that they weren't asking for. And I wonder if, first of all, Mr. Smith, Chief Smith, sorry, if you are involved in that, and secondly, could this money be used for something like that? I know you mentioned this is for buildings. So Scott, I don't want to go too far off course. This is just for
No, that's a legitimate question, I think, and I'd be happy to entertain it and field the answers here. I think that's appropriate.
Appreciate that. And Eric, I have no agenda on it. I'm just raising the question.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, I think firefighting capacity on our vessels that we own and or are within our harbor is absolute. But from my understanding, what was put forward is that there is no fire pump on that boat. It's a pretty expensive.
For a second, and I'm back. I missed everything you just said.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, so the specification that I think TJ has written on that boat and the loan order going forward is just for the harbor master and their duties and related duties therein. So obviously they're not specifically trained to fight fire. That doesn't fall within their duties, although we have a joint relationship with their current vessel that does have firefighting capacity, not large. It's only a 500-gallon pump. And that would be similarly what could be put on this boat. And last I talked to TJ, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of an additional 60 or 70,000. Don't quote me on that, because again, it's his project, not mine. We just talked about it briefly. But yeah, I would absolutely encourage that we do that in any vessel that is of adequate size and response capacity to increase fire flow that we can handle in the harbor. I mean, my personal opinion is that, yeah, we should have a fire boat that has actual large capacity, thousands of gallons of water fire flow. Can I cite a lot of use of it and the absolute necessity of it? No, that we fortunately have not really had those kind of incidents. But we're pretty fortunate in that. You know, it's no different than the city of Boston and Massport. They've got significant firefighting capacity, but they're not out putting out big vessel fires every day. I mean, obviously we avoid those in a big way because it's a lot different than a fire on land. And people that own and operate those vessels know how lethal it can be and how expensive it gets to be for them. So, you know, there's a different fire prevention strategy on the water than there is in everyday homes and businesses. But to that end, yeah, I think that it should have that capacity. It's going to be additional funding. And to answer your question, no, these particular grants, the assistance to firefighter grants, do not provide for that type of thing. They don't fund boats. They won't fund quads or any of those types of specialty type vehicles. They're very focused on firefighter safety at the forefront and also community safety. But truly their focus is more on firefighter safety, so we can go out and deliver what we do to the public, excuse me, safely, and be able to handle the requests from the public. So those start to get into those niche areas. Things that may cover it is like the port security grant, but it is only like a 50-50 match, and it is ultra competitive. So it's difficult to get those funds. And I know TJ's looked at it and they try to wrap their head around whether it's really worth the effort and time that had to go into those grant applications. And I think at this point, what he's seen and the history behind them is that we would likely get turned down, and it's not a real huge effective use of his time to do all that work and know that you're probably not going to get anything out of it. So that's kind of where we sit with that. Certainly, I like I said, I support putting a fire pump on that. You know, the police boat has one on there, but it's getting fairly long in the tooth. And we don't have anything else out on the water that does it. Coast Guard hasn't been in that business for decades. So it's a gap, and it's certainly a gap we should try to close.
And so today's agenda item's got nothing to do with that, but I don't know what the process would be. I'll ask Chairman Memhard or Councilor Gross to sort of look at the math on leveraging. We're already spending X number of dollars on a boat, and I think you said don't quote me on the number, so I won't quote you on the number.
Yep.
But it's a lot less to put equipment on a boat, I'm guessing, than buying a whole boat. Just kind of
yeah, and I think before TJ's to the point of having a final specification that's signed off and that is what's under contract to build, and then make a change order later, you may be able to squeeze a change order in for the same price. But if they get too far along in the construction, the design and the construction of the boat, you're going to get to a point where they've already built something that they got to rip out, which costs you more money and materials, time. So you're going to spend more money to get the same outcome than if you do it up front. And I agree with you. I think that we should take a quick hard look at that, you know, and this unfortunately was in the transition between administrations and between councils. And so it is one of those things he desperately needs to get done, and it's expensive either way we do it. And so I get the urgency, and there was a lot of pressure on him to do this as fiscally tightly as possible, and an extra 70, give or take $1,000 for something that doesn't fall under his department or his job description, but the cost is going to sit on him and his department. I totally understand his perspective with that. So,
yeah. Councilor Wordley, it's an appropriate question, but and it follows up on the same topic that the old Budget and Finance Committee last season, particularly with Councilor John McCarthy and I, saw this as a potential opportunity, and Councilor Gross will be aware of this. But it's really not the harbor master. There's a differentiation here between two departments, responsibilities for the asset, the funding, and it becomes more complicated than it might appear to be a natural piggyback fit. for a variety of reasons that Chief Smith has helped review, I think.
So I agree, and I understand, and there's no trying to point fingers at TJ for not doing so. I think he did all the right things for all the right
Oh, yeah.
reasons, and the timing was such that it needed to be done. And his jurisdiction.
This isn't on our agenda though, Jeff. This may not be an appropriate time to be discussing.
Yeah, that's the
this.
thing I'm trying to ask. What's
Yeah,
the way to do
You're
that?
gonna have to ask that outside of this forum, I think.
Yeah, doesn't relate to the funding that the chief is before us with.
If just for conversation purposes, does anybody have an objection to me trying to figure out how to get that on the agenda?
I'd be happy to bring you up to speed outside of the council, and if you have further concerns that you'd like to put on the agenda, we can discuss in open session, certainly.
Thank you.
It did take up a lot of our time, and we saw it as an opportunity, and I think we pretty well vetted that it, practically speaking, was not something, TJ faced a lot of obstacles getting as far as he did to get the boat authorized for funding. And as Chief Smith and as Councillor Gross has said, we didn't want to slow down his ultimate application and getting his project in the works.
I have no objection to the way it's gone and where TJ stands with the process. I just want to follow up with Chief Smith if there's an opportunity to piggyback. And I don't know the timing, and I'm not going to get in the way, but if we can figure that out, I think it's worth exploring. So I'll
It's an administrative, exercise now. Everything, you can ask the administration about it, I think is really the way to go forward with that.
thank you for that, Councilor.
It has to come from them.
Yes,
And there is the funding sources because the Waterways is enterprise fund, and that would not be an appropriate use for the
Right.
enterprise money.
I think it all makes sense. I think at the end of the day, it's still dollars, and we got to figure out if that makes sense. I'll work with the administration on this, though. Thank you both for the advice on that.
absolutely. And congratulations, Chief, on getting this application together. And we wish we sent it off with high hopes and expectations.
Yep, and if you see any of our federal delegation or Bruce or Ann Margaret, thank them for pushing and getting this up to the director's desk so they can kind of make sure that it stays in the right stack and is viewed under the correct lens by the committees that review these things. It definitely makes a difference when those committees have been told that, hey, no, this is a legitimate need. This isn't fluff, people reaching for extra things. This is a good project. Take a good hard look at it.
Chief, I have a question.
Sure.
Gloucester being very resourceful, and old fire hose was always at a premium. How do we dispose of it?
Yeah, so we almost never have put a section of hose in the dumpster since I've been here, and I think that predates me by a long time. So the first pecking order for our disposal through our hose officer, who's got my marching orders as to what to do with it, is that the first dibs on it, if you will, or right of refusal, is the DPW, because they're not using the hose in a life safety capacity. So while the hose, if the hose has a major issue, like a failure issue, then we wouldn't put it forward to them. But if it's aged out, but it's still in reasonably good shape, then we can pass it on to them for their applications and the stuff that they need it for. If they don't need it, then the next opportunity goes to TJ for docks and all the dockage that he has, because it makes a great bumper on the side of a lot of his dockage, which he has a ton of it around town, and things that he can use it for. And then the last option is typically down to the GHS, down to their athletic director, because they use a lot of it for the workouts and all those types of things.
Right.
And at this point, they've with all the hose that we've gone through over the years, we haven't had to just throw it away because nobody needed it. If we get past that level, then we'll probably put it out under a general surplus notice to all the departments in the city, and then a word filters out, and there's many uses for that stuff that I'm sure people would pick it up for. So in this current process right now, we've just ordered, I don't know, I got a $15,000 order that just came in that'll be replacing a bunch of old out of date hose, and I got another $40,000 order Thank God all that money came from some of the federal grants where we didn't spend as much on training as we expected. And they gave us an authorization to repurpose that for high priority items, which fire hose is one of those. And so we're finally getting caught up on quite a bit of old hose that needs to go away and be repurposed because it's aged out.
Great. That's good. I'm really happy to hear that it's all getting repurposed at high levels.
Yeah, it's expensive stuff and it still has value even when it's not appropriate for life safety work. So yeah, we got a lot of needs for it around town.
It's interesting to hear your review of those potential applications because you wouldn't necessarily think of those off the top of your head, but it's a wonderful example of life after the fire department.
Yep. Yeah. Got to be creative, right? Make use of everything.
Excellent. Are there any other questions or all set? This item, there's no vote needed this evening, just we're being kept up to speed.
All right. Outstanding. Well, I appreciate your time tonight and we look forward to hopefully bringing this back to you for a real vote and acceptance, which would be awesome.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you,
All right,
Chief Smith.
Take care. Have a great
Good
night.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
I would like to take a moment to recognize Councillor Jamie O'Hara, at-large councillor, who has joined us on this Zoom call meeting tonight. Well, welcome, Jamie, and thank you. And excuse my dogs. I think there's a coyote running through the yard. So the next item is on Kenny's plate. If you'd like to bring us up to speed with the
I seem
items
to be
you have
going
before
in
us.
and out, so
Yes, thank you.
if you lose me, I'm going in and out. I don't know what's going on. So
And Councilmember, I
ahead.
see someone named Tracy in the attendees list. I'm not sure if that's Councilor O'Neill or not, but maybe if she is, you recognize Jamie O'Hara, maybe to recognize that she's here, if that's her.
Yeah, I saw Tracy had joined Mary Ann and the participants, and she's raising her hand. So yes, I believe it is Councillor O'Neill. So welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. And thank you, Councillor Worthley, for pointing that out.
No problem. Sorry to
And
interrupt.
back to Kenny. Kenny.
Thank you. Good evening, councilors. There's been a significant improvement in the overdrawn report. If you remember last time, there was 24 accounts. Now we have 12. My assistant, he reached out to all the departments on Monday, received numerous responses and what we call OBTs, ordinary budget transfers. So there were a lot of transfers within the department, within their budget, within their category, whether it be it personal services, ordinary maintenance, or capital outlay. So a lot of the deficits were resolved that way, and then also through payroll encumbrances. As you would see, as an example, the mayor's office, it's no longer listed. That was due to a payroll encumbrance, and that's all been worked out. So as you can see, there's been a big improvement. It was roughly over $400,000. Now we're at $271,000. So there's been a big improvement, and this is pretty much where we're at, during the year. So if any councilors have any questions, that's all I have.
I have one question, if I may. When I go to real quick, if I go to another page, can you still see me? If I'm
Yes.
Okay. So Kenny, thank you for this. It's great news that it's better than before. And thanks for clarifying the situation in the mayor's office with the additional salary taken off. The only question I have is about 3/4 of the way down, interest on notes for sewer and water. Is that interest that we're paying more than we thought, or is it interest we're receiving on money that we're holding and it's less than projected?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that on the report.
Okay, so it's about 6 from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 and 7 from the bottom.
That might be from the last report.
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it is. It was in the
Yes,
attach-
that's from the last report that was reported, water and sewer, and we did receive OBTs to transfer that. But in the current report, that's been remedied. That's been corrected.
So that was one of the attachments in your email, though, from
So, or maybe so the first page of the report, that's the current, and then the second page, that's the aging. So it's just format. So what we do is we show you the last report and then the current report. So in that case, like the water interest, it was $28,000 last report. In this report, it's zero. It's been resolved. So
Okay.
that's what the second page, that is just what we call an aging report.
Mhm.
Just to kind of show you where we were and where we are now. And you'll see this progress. So the next report, you'll see 3 columns with data.
As a comparative.
Correct.
John Dunn has his hand up for us.
Yes, thank you, Counselor. Kind of specific to the counselor's question on debt service. So what typically happens is that even though it's gone from the list right now, it probably will appear, we made a transfer in from some other debt service functions that allowed that to happen, but those will go underwater by this amount at the end of the year. So primarily where we are is that we oftentimes issue some short-term debt in June of each year that matures in September of each year. And it's that short-term debt that we issue for a number of months that can result in this, because when we're issuing that debt in June, the budget for the year has already been passed. So we're going to run into this. Typically, we leave these open, as Kenny had mentioned at the last meeting. We do, move substantial funds around at the end of the year to cover any deficits that might exist in the middle of June.
Thank you for taking the time to educate me. I appreciate it.
Kenny, did you have anything further you wanted to point out to our attention?
So as far as this report, that's all I have. I also did send the what we discussed last time, the year-to-date budget report, or also known as the healthy report. The balances. So we did send out the year-to-date budget report for the general fund, for the city, general fund for the school, which is reported a little differently. It's reported by location. And then we also did send out the enterprise funds, water, sewer, waterways, and rink. The way it was categorized was essentially it's the same manner how the budget's passed by category. So by personal services, that would be salaries, wages, overtime, longevity, those types of payroll related expenses. The ordinary maintenance, that would be essentially non-payroll. That would be vendor related expenses, whether it be supplies or services. And you also will see a category for capital outlay. Not all departments have capital outlay. For example, DPW typically would have capital outlay, or water enterprise or enterprise would have capital outlay, like for example, for water meters. So in that instance, it would be that category. So I just wanted to let everybody know, that's how it's reported. And if you see that type of expense, that's what it's related to. And this is something I've ran through 1231. As you can see, there's some departments, some accounts that are in the plus, some are in the negative. Like for example, like the mayor's office in this report's in the negative. Now they're actually in the positive by, if I ran this report today, they'd be in the positive by 24,000. So as I recall last meeting, Councilor Gross had mentioned that, these balances, they keep changing, they keep, rolling. So it's just that point in time when you look at the report. I mean, in my capacity, I'll look at an account in the morning, it'll be much different in the afternoon. So that's how quickly, some of these balances change through budget transfers, or we have a weekly warrant. So, for example, we have a vendor warrant this week. Next week we'll have a payroll. So there's constantly, there's always something going on, each week. So these balances, they change. So I guess I'm looking for feedback from the committee as far as format. I also did talk to John about the format. You seem to be okay with the format as I just described. And then we also John and I did talk about frequency. John has been going back and forth with the S&P, with the rating agencies, and they seem to recommend monthly. So if this is a report that you're looking for monthly, it seems like that would be very favorable with the rating agencies. So we would just need to know, would you like that at the first meeting or the second meeting of the month? So I guess now we're just really looking for, as far as format and frequency, just looking for feedback from the committee at this point.
Thank you, Kenny.
Memhard?
Yes.
I may. So I raised this question at the last meeting, and I just first want to thank you, Kenny. You pulled it together in, I think, one day. For me, it was a way for me to help understand the budget and learn a little bit here. I don't want to give you more work to do. And if it seemed to you to be relatively simple and it's good for the regulators and if it's just as easy, I'm thrilled because this is helpful. I don't know about you, Councilor Gross or Memhard, but seeing the overdrawn accounts is helpful to know, but also knowing what departments are doing well. And I just want to further, because this was raised to me, none of this is my intention to say, well, now that this department is doing well, we can take money from, we're not trying to punish someone who did it. I think it's in some ways to say kudos to that department head or manager for managing the budget in a way that gives us extra money, which now we see we had $5.2 million in free cash. I think they should be applauded for that. So this is really for information only and informing us as we're going through the budget process. There's no intention to say, this was raised to me that might feel that way. I'm not sitting here to try and say, well, now we can take money from this department or that department. I just think it's a healthy thing. So thank you, Kenny, for pulling it together. And I hope the rest of the committee members think it's valuable.
Look, I would just comment, Jeff, that it's certainly a good warm up for our budget season, and it gives us a chance to get our heads around the way the budget's structured and sort of a soft step into our actual budget work for the next budget year. Councilor Gross, do you have any comment or thoughts?
No, I think it's a really well put together report. It gives us a good snapshot of what's going on at that particular time, and once a month is perfect. I don't know which is more advantageous. Gives us the best information the first or the second meeting of the month. Kenny, I'll leave that up to you and John. You guys are the ones who know what to do as far as I'm concerned. And I think it wouldn't be bad for the full council to get this in their packet too, just to have, to see the format and know what's going on, because they need to know the whole budget when it comes time to talk about it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's a really good job. This is an excellent little synopsis of our budget.
I could say as a new counselor, it's been a while since I've been on the council. I wasn't involved in the budget like I will be with this committee. It is extremely helpful. And if it feels like I'm asking questions that you guys already know the answers to, forgive me, but hopefully this might also shed some light on looking at it from a different perspective. So I hope that is valuable to everybody too.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything else for us this evening, Kenny?
That's all I have. Thank you.
There's no other old business, any new business before us? If there's not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn for the evening.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Councilor Gross,
Yes.
Councilor Worthley,
Yes.
Councilor Memhard, yes. And thank you all, Sherry and Kenny and John, and
Yes.
thank you, Tracy and Jamie O'Hara, councilors, for joining us as well. Very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Everyone.
good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.